My name is Lila Moreno. I'm 24 years old, and my life is measured in coffee spoons and aching arches. The lock on the glass door of the Harbor and Grit Diner clicked shut at 1:58 in the morning. That's 2 minutes early. But the wind coming off the Lakefield docks tonight wasn't just cold. It was personal. It was a mean, wet February wind that found every gap in the window seals and every frayed thread in my thin jacket. The sound of it whistling over the empty harbor was the only music we had left. Inside, the diner smelled of old grease, sour bleach, and the bottom of a coffee pot that's been burnt dry. It was the smell of the end of the line. "All right, Lila, cash out the register. I'm doing the pool." Myrtle, our shift supervisor, was already at the corner booth, her gray-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun that looked as exhausted as I felt. She was dumping the tip jar onto the vinyl tabletop, a small mountain of ones and fives, a few quarters. "That guy in booth 4 was good to us," she muttered, pulling a stiff, cream-colored credit card receipt from the pile. It was heavy cardstock, not the flimsy thermal paper our machine usually spit out. He left this on the card, but he wanted the slip process separate, said it was for the house. I barely remembered him. It had been a blur of a shift. Oh, wait, yeah, the suit. A guy in a dark, perfectly tailored suit who sat alone for 2 hours with just a black coffee and a slice of apple pie. He was quiet. Too quiet. He hadn't looked at his phone once. He'd just watched the room. He watched the rain turn to sleet against the glass. He watched me refill sugar caddies. When I topped off his coffee, his eyes dark. Steady had met mine for just a second. It wasn't a friendly look, or an unfriendly one. It was an assessment, like he was calculating the wear on my shoes. The name on the receipt was Casimir Valente. Myrtle slid the receipt into the empty tip jar. "This one stays here. It's the VIP pool. Corporate's quality check money. Don't you dare mix it in with the register drop." "Got it, Myrtle." I went to the back, my feet leaden. My shift had ended an hour ago, but it's never really over until the floors are mopped. I grabbed the big black trash bag from the kitchen can. I was on autopilot, my mind already on the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment and the blissful, brief oblivion of sleep. I swept through the dining room, booth 4. I picked up the damp napkins, the empty sugar packets, the straw wrapper. I grabbed the empty tip jar from the counter, the one Myrtle had put the VIP receipt in, and dumped the contents into the trash bag. The action didn't even register. It was just another piece of paper in a sea of waste. I tied the heavy bag, dragged it out the back door, and tossed it into the dumpster in the alley. The metal lid slammed shut with a hollow clang. By the time I was back inside washing my hands, my phone buzzed in the back pocket of my apron. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, but a number I knew by heart. Blocked ID. My stomach turned to ice. I let it ring. "Everything all right, kid?" Myrtle asked, stuffing the night's cash into a deposit bag. "Yeah, just, spam." The phone stopped, then immediately buzzed again, this time with a text. "Flashwave credit. Your payment is 48 hours past due. Failure to remit will result in an immediate payroll garnishment of 25%. A collection agent will be dispatched to your place of employment." I leaned against the stainless steel counter, my breath catching. 25%. I barely survived on 100%. The debt wasn't even mine. Not really. It was the ghost of my mother's hospital bills, the lingering cost of a sickness that had taken her anyway, leaving me with a 5-figure hole I'd never crawl out of. Flashwave Credit wasn't a bank. It was a digital shark that fed on people like me, offering instant cash through an app and then swallowing you whole with triple-digit interest. The diner bell chimed, startling us both. A man in a cheap bomber jacket pushed in, ignoring the closed sign. He wasn't here for food. He walked right up to Myrtle and dropped a manila envelope on the counter. It had an official-looking logo, a stylized eagle over a map of the Midwest. Bureau of Interstate Commerce Integrity, BC. "You've been flagged for a Tier 3 tax audit," the man said, his voice flat. "We've detected irregularities in your nightly cash-out reports. We expect full cooperation. Someone will be in touch." He didn't wait for a reply. He just turned and left, the bell tinkling mockingly behind him. Myrtle's face went white. Irregularities. We're just a diner. She looked at the cash bag in her hand like it was a snake. I couldn't breathe. Garnishment, audit, it was all just a vice. Tightening. "Myrtle," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I'm not feeling so good. Can I please go?" She just waved a trembling hand. "Go. Get out of here. It's all a mess anyway." I didn't need to be told twice. I ripped off my apron, grabbed my coat, and ran out into the sleet. The streets were empty. The puddles in the cracked pavement were already glazing over with ice. I pulled my coat tight, my head down. Walking fast, the 6 blocks to my apartment building felt like a mile. I had that feeling, the skin on the back of my neck prickling. I risked a look over my shoulder. A gray sedan. It was cruising slowly, half a block behind me. Its headlights cut through the swirling ice. I ducked into the alcove of a closed pawn shop. The sedan slowed, then paused at the intersection. It didn't turn. It just sat there, waiting. My heart was a hammer. I was just being paranoid. It was just someone lost. I bolted, running the last 2 blocks to my building, the Riverview Suites. A total dump that hadn't seen a coat of paint since the 1980s, but it was all I could afford. I fumbled with my key at the lobby door, my fingers numb. When I got to my floor, my stomach dropped again. Taped to my door, apartment 2B, was a red piece of paper. Final notice of past due rent. I ripped it off the door, unlocked the deadbolt, and fell inside, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against the wood, my eyes closed, just trying to get air into my lungs. The rent, flash wave, the audit, the gray car. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. I stripped off my wet coat and crawled into bed, still in my uniform. I must have fallen asleep, because the ring of my phone jolted me awake. The room was pitch black. The glowing screen read, "Blocked ID." I silenced it. It rang again. I silenced it again. From the floor below, I heard a muffled shout. The neighbors. They were always fighting. A woman screamed. A man yelled something about money. The walls were paper. It felt like they were in the room with me. My phone lit up again. Not a call, a text. It was 2:17 in the morning. Unknown number. The message was 5 words. "Don't worry about Flashwave." I stared at it. A cold laugh bubbled in my throat. It was a scam, a sick, cruel joke. They were toying with me now. I threw the phone onto the threadbare carpet. A moment later, a beam of light swept across my ceiling. I froze. It was headlights, but they weren't moving. They were stationary, angled up from the street. I crawled off the bed and crept to the window, pulling the edge of the thin curtain back an inch. Down on the street, a black SUV was parked across from my building. It was huge, the kind of vehicle that looks like it belongs to the government. The headlights were off now, but the parking lights were on, casting a faint glow. A man was standing next to the driver's side door. He was just a shadow, tall, broad-shouldered. He was staring right up at my window, the 2nd floor, my apartment, 2B. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. He stood there for a long time, maybe 30 seconds. It felt like an hour. He didn't check his phone. He just watched. Then, as if he'd seen exactly what he came to see, he got back into the SUV. The engine started a low, powerful hum I could feel in my chest, and it pulled away, disappearing around the corner. I stayed by the window until the sky started to turn a bruised, sickly gray. I didn't sleep. I just shivered, replaying the night, the receipt, the call, the BICE agent, the red notice, the text, the man in the dark. I was trapped. I was going to lose my job, my apartment, everything. When my phone chimed with a new email notification, I flinched. It was probably the garnishment notice, the final nail. I picked it up. The sender was Flashwave Accounts Department. Subject, your Flashwave account status? I braced myself and opened it. My eyes scanned the text. It didn't make sense. I read it again, and a third time. Dear Miss Moreno, thank you for your payment. Your outstanding balance of $18,450.29 has been paid in full. Your account balance is now $0.00. Your account has been closed. My heart stopped. Then it started again, hammering against my ribs so hard I thought I might be sick. Paid in full. It was a lie, a mistake. This had to be a mistake. I didn't have 18 cents, let alone $18,000. Who? Don't worry about Flashwave. The text, the black SUV, the man in the dark. And then, a sudden, sharp memory me, on autopilot, sweeping a heavy, cream-colored piece of paper into a black trash bag. The receipt, the VIP receipt, Casimir Valente. The man in the suit who watched everything. No, it was impossible. It was insane. People didn't just pay off a stranger's debt, not in Lakefield, not in the real world. Maybe he'd left some massive tip, and this was all a terrible, cosmic misunderstanding. I ran to the window. The sleet had stopped. The pale morning light was spreading over the wet, empty street. I looked down at the alley behind my building, at the large green dumpster, and I watched as the municipal garbage truck, right on schedule, rolled to a stop. Its massive hydraulic arms hooked the dumpster. With a groan of powerful machinery, it lifted the entire bin, tipping it up and over. I watched as every black bag my bag tumbled into the truck's massive, compacting maw. The one piece of paper that could explain what happened, the only proof of the tip, the amount. The man, it was gone, crushed, buried under a ton of the city's refuse. The truck lowered the empty dumpster with a crash that echoed off the brick walls. It pulled away, its diesel engine fading. I stood there, my hand flat against the cold glass. My debt was gone, but I had a feeling I just traded it for something much, much worse. I walked into the Harbor and Grit that evening feeling like a ghost in my own skin. The $0.00 email was burned into my memory, but it didn't feel like a rescue. It felt like a trap. I hadn't slept. I'd spent the day watching the street from my window, expecting the black SUV or the gray sedan. Nothing. The diner was quiet when I clocked in. Too quiet. Myrtle was at the end of the counter, polishing silverware, her movements stiff and angry. She didn't look up when I came in. "Myrtle, I'm here." She dropped a fork. It clattered loudly on the floor. "Where is it, Lila?" Her voice was low, shaking. This wasn't her usual bad shift frustration. This was fear. "Where is what, Myrtle?" "Don't play dumb with me. Not today." She turned, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. The receipt, the heavy cardstock receipt from the man in the suit, the VIP pool. "Where is it?" My blood went cold. I'd been so focused on the debt that I'd forgotten the receipt. I swallowed, the air thick. "Myrtle, I think I threw it out. When I was clearing the tables, I just swept everything into the bag. I wasn't thinking." Myrtle closed her eyes. She leaned back against the coffee machine, her hand pressed to her chest. "Oh, kid, no. I'm so sorry. Was it that much money?" "Money," she laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "That wasn't just a tip. Lila, that was a quality check receipt from Harbor and Grit Holdings, corporate, that man, Casimir Valente. He's one of the owners of the whole chain." I felt faint. An owner. I'd thrown an owner's check receipt in the dumpster. "But that's not the worst of it," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "That BC agent last night, the tax audit, that was because he was here, and that's still not the worst of it." She looked left and right, though the diner was empty. "We got a call this morning, from downtown, the Metropolitan Organized Crimes Tribunal. They had agents in here last night, too. 2 of them sitting at the counter, filming. They weren't watching us. They were watching him." MOCT. I'd seen the acronym on the news. They didn't go after waitresses. They went after organized crime. "They're investigating Valente," Myrtle whispered. "And now, the one piece of paper that proves his transaction was legitimate, that proves the tip was real and on the books you threw it in a landfill." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a terrible pity. They don't think it was a mistake, Lila. They think we're skimming. They think you took the tip off the books for him. I couldn't feel my legs. I was going to be sick. This was worse than debt. Debt was just money. This was prison. I need a minute. I stumbled away from the counter, past the kitchen and into the dry storage closet. I leaned against a 50-pound bag of flour, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My phone felt heavy in my pocket. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling. I had to know. I opened the Flashwave app. It was different. The usual threatening red banners were gone. Instead, a sunny graphic of a smiling family holding hands popped up. A message was typed over it. Congratulations, you have been selected for our Second Chance humanitarian program. Your debt has been compassionately cleared. Compassionately. The word made my skin crawl. It was a lie, a clean, corporate lie to cover what had happened. $18,000. Wiped away with a press release. I tried to access my account details, my payment history. A new screen access denied. Account closed. I was free, and I was locked out. I stumbled back out, my head spinning. I had to pay my rent. The red notice was still in my pocket. If the Flashwave money was real, maybe I could survive. I had $38 in my checking account. I told Myrtle I needed to run to the ATM. The machine on the corner hummed under my fingers. I punched in my PIN. Available balance $38.22. The same. The $18,000 hadn't gone to me. It had just vanished. I requested a mini statement. My last hope fading, the little paper slid out. I scanned the transactions. Paycheck, deposit check, cashing fee, and then, at the bottom, rent late fee assessment, $50, rent late fee waiver, $50. Waived. My landlord hadn't waived a fee in his life. He charged for dead light bulbs. A new email pinged on my phone from the Lakefield Utility Company. Subject, your account is settled. Dear Miss Moreno, we are pleased to inform you that your past due balance of $412 has been paid in full by a third-party donation from Civic Ease Pay. Your service will not be interrupted. Civic Ease Pay, Flashwave, the late fee. It wasn't just the one debt. A hand, an invisible, powerful, and terrifyingly efficient hand was sweeping through my life, cleaning every financial stain I had. It was setting me free, and it was tying me in knots. The diner bell chimed. I looked up from my phone. A man was standing just inside the door. He wasn't the man from last night. He was taller, built like a linebacker, with a severe face and dark hair pulled back in a tight knot. He wore a simple, dark jacket. He scanned the room, his eyes skipping over Myrtle and landing right on me. He walked over. He didn't sit. He just stood in front of the counter. Lila Moreno, he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was a low rumble, like gravel shifting. Yes, Mr. Valente wishes to see you, tonight. My heart did a painful, slow lurch. Mr. Valente, the owner. He wants to see you, the man repeated, as if I hadn't spoken. 10 o'clock. I can't, I stammered, looking at Myrtle. I have a shift. Is this about the receipt? I can explain. It was an accident. The man's expression didn't change. You will be at the Sterling Pike at 10 o'clock. Myrtle grabbed a rag, her hands shaking so hard she dropped it. The Pike, that's dock territory. Lila, Valente territory. The TV over the bar was on, the local news playing silently. A chyron slid across the bottom. BC continues crackdown on Riverspan. Logistics rumors of Green Gate. Payment network surface. Riverspan, the biggest shipping name on the docks. I looked at the tall man, then at the TV, then at Myrtle, the docks, the shipments, the audits. Myrtle grabbed my arm, her nails dug in. Lila, she whispered, her voice frantic. Listen to me. In Lakefield, nobody does anything for free. You understand? Especially not men who own the water. Men like that don't give gifts. They make investments. You be careful. The tall man just watched us. 10 o'clock, he said again, and placed a small, embossed card on the counter. The Sterling Pike. It had an address. He turned and left. I stood there, frozen. Myrtle, what do I do? You don't go, she said, her voice firm. You go to the police. And say what? That a man paid my debts, that I threw away a receipt. They already think I'm a criminal, Myrtle. The MO said. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, the same number as last night. It was a screenshot. My blood turned to ice. It was a screenshot of an internal BC memo. My name was right there, highlighted in yellow, recommending immediate interview with waitress Lila Moreno regarding missing VIP receipt. Timing suggests potential collusion in off-books compensation, flagged as person of interest. They were going to arrest me. A second text came through. They think you're my accomplice. If you don't show up, they'll be right. Ren Aldana, the tall man. I was trapped. If I didn't go, the BC would come for me. If I did go, I was walking into the lion's den. I have to go, I said, untying my apron. Lila, no. Myrtle, they think I'm working with him if I hide. It only looks worse. I have to clear this up. I didn't know if I was lying to her or to myself. The Sterling Pike wasn't a building. It was a boat, a massive, multi-tiered restaurant vessel, permanently moored at the end of a private pier. It was all dark wood and polished brass, glowing with a warmth that felt unnatural in the cold. Industrial air of the docks. The man, Ren, was waiting at the gangplank. He just nodded and led me inside. The restaurant was empty, completely empty, just tables set with white linen, waiting for guests who would never arrive. At the very back, in a booth overlooking the dark, churning water, sat Casimir Valenti. He looked exactly as he had in the diner, still, quiet, watchful. He was wearing another dark suit. He didn't get up. Ren gestured to the booth. I slid in, my hands clasped so tight my knuckles were white. Ren didn't leave. He stood about 10 feet away, a silent statue. Miss Moreno, Ciez Valente said. His voice was smooth, quiet, not at all like Ren's. Mr. Valente, I am so sorry about the receipt. It was an accident. I was tired. I was cleaning up. I wasn't paying attention. He held up a hand, not impatiently, just to stop me. It's fine. He slid a thin, black leather notebook across the table. It was heavy. I opened it. Inside, on the left-hand page, was a perfect, high-resolution photograph of the receipt I had thrown away, the one from the diner. I saw the total. I saw the tip. The amount made my vision swim. It was more than my debt. It was life-changing. On the right-hand page, written in clean, black ink, was a note. Don't worry, I hate debt predators. I looked up from the book. He had a digital copy. He had it the whole time. The MOCT, the BICE he knew they were watching. He'd left a paper trail he knew would be investigated, and he'd kept a private copy. You paid it, I whispered. Flashwave, the rent, my utilities. I made an inquiry, he said. Why? My voice was small, but it didn't tremble. Why me? He watched me for a long moment. Because I sat in your diner for 2 hours. You refilled my coffee 7 times. You never once checked your phone. You were kind to the old man at the counter who only ordered toast, and your hands were shaking when you thought I couldn't see. He leaned forward, just slightly. A person's fate shouldn't be decided by an algorithm. Software shouldn't get to decide if you eat or if you're homeless. I closed the notebook, so you decided for me. A flicker of something surprised respect passed through his eyes. I removed an obstacle. That obstacle was $18,000. People don't just remove that. I took a breath. You knew the MOCT was there. You knew about BC. You used me. You made me look like an accomplice. You are an accomplice, Miss Moreno. The moment your debt vanished. I don't want your money, I said, pushing the notebook back. I don't want to be involved in this. Whatever Riverspan Logistics or this Dorset ring is, I want no part of it. The Dorset ring. He seemed genuinely curious. You've heard of them. I heard the name. That Flashwave app, it's a laundry service for them, isn't it? That's what this is about. He smiled, a real, thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're quick." He nodded. "Flashwave is one of their operations, and your debt, it was just a loose thread. I needed to pull it. I just wanted to see who was holding the other end." I stood up, or I tried to. My legs were weak. "I want to go. I won't say anything. I want my old life back." "You can't have it," he said, his voice still quiet, but now hard. "The BC thinks you're a criminal. The Dorset ring thinks you're my new accountant. You have no old life to go back to." "So what?" I demanded, my voice finally rising. "I'm your prisoner. I traded a loan shark for you." "I'm not offering you a favor," he said, rising slowly from the booth. He was taller than I thought. "And I'm not offering you a cage. I'm offering you a legal job. We're clear on that. My legitimate businesses require auditing." He walked to the window, looking out at the dark water. "You understand supply chains, Miss Moreno. You've been at the bottom of one your entire life. You know what it looks like when things don't add up. You know what it feels like." He turned back to me. "I don't need a pawn. I need someone who knows how to ask the right questions." My internship began the next day. Valente Freight Audits wasn't a gleaming downtown office. It was a single, vast, cold room on the second floor of an old red brick warehouse overlooking the river. The air smelled of damp brick, motor oil, and the faint, sweet scent of old cargo, maybe spices, from 50 years ago. My desk was a heavy steel table. On it sat a laptop so powerful it looked like it belonged at NASA, 3 glowing monitors, and a single scalding hot cup of black coffee that Ren placed there every morning before disappearing. I didn't quit my job at the harbor and grit. CAs had been clear about that. "You are an intern here. You are a waitress there. You will keep your routine. Routines are armor." So my life became a blur of 2 worlds. By night, I was slinging hash browns and dodging Myrtle's worried glances. By day, I was drowning in numbers. My task was exactly what CAs had said audit Riverspan Logistics. He gave me access to their manifests from the last 6 months. It was a digital mountain of data bills of lading, weight receipts, fuel surcharges, container IDs. "What am I looking for?" I'd asked him that first day. CAs had been staring out the window at a barge pushing slowly upriver. "A mistake," he said. "Something that doesn't belong. A container that's too light. A truck that took a long way for no reason. A fee that was paid twice." "You want me to find where they're losing money?" I said. He turned, his eyes locking on mine. "No, I want you to find where they're making it." For the first week, it was meaningless. Just numbers. But then my waitress brain kicked in. The part of me that knows who's going to order a diet soda before they even sit down. Just by the way they fold their coat, I started looking for patterns, not just errors. I wasn't looking at the big cargo. I was looking at the small stuff, the miscellaneous and expedited routes. And I found it. A route code BN5E. It was almost nothing. A small load delivery, always marked as disaster relief aid or charitable donations. But it ran 3 times a week, and it always took a detour. According to the GPS logs, the trucks would exit the interstate, drive 5 miles inland, and stop for exactly 1 hour at a location that wasn't on their manifest. Then they'd get back on the highway. The location was an abandoned steel mill, a place locals called Ironwell Yards. I cross-referenced the property records. The land was owned by a shell corporation whose address traced back to a law firm. The same law firm that had represented every one of the Dorset Ring's associates for the last decade. It was Dorset's Blind Warehouse. I brought it to CA's. He was in the warehouse's cavernous main floor, watching a welder repair a cargo hook. He looked at the data on my tablet, his expression unreadable in the flash of the welding arc. "Ironwell Yards," he said, testing the name. "BN5E. He nodded slowly. "Good, you asked the right question." The next morning, Ren was waiting for me. He placed 2 items on my steel desk. The first was a plastic ID card, Riverspan Logistics, Quality Assurance. It had my picture on it. I didn't remember taking a picture. The second was a small black device, about the size of a shirt button, attached to a magnetic clip. "It's a camera," Ren said. "Worn on the chest, under your coat. It records high-definition video and audio. You turn it on by pressing the side. Once." My blood ran cold. "You want me to go there?" "Mister, Valente needs to see what's in the boxes marked charitable donations." "I'm an auditor, a waitress. I'm not this." "You're the only one who found it," Ren said, his voice flat. "And you're the only one they won't recognize. You're just a girl in a beat-up car." He tapped the camera. "Tonight, after your shift, go to Ironwell. But you only record. You do not get out of the car. You do not engage. You see what you see. And you leave." That night, my hands were shaking so hard I dropped a plate at the diner. Myrtle sent me home early, thinking I had the flu. My old Corolla's engine knocked as I pulled off the highway. Following the route from the GPS logs, the snow was coming down harder now. Thick, wet flakes that stuck to the windshield. The road to Ironwell Yards was unpaved and full of potholes. The Corolla's headlights cut a weak yellow beam through the darkness. The steel mill was a skeleton against the skyline. Just rusted-out towers and black, empty windows. A single chain-link fence, topped with wire, surrounded the main yard. The gate was closed. I parked across the street, in the shadow of a derelict loading dock. My heart felt like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. I unclipped the camera from my bra, where I'd hidden it, and clipped it to the collar of my coat. Pointing it through the windshield, I pressed the side. A tiny green light blinked once, then went out. It was on. For 20 minutes, nothing, just the sound of the wind and my own breathing. I was about to leave, to tell CAs it was a dead end. Then, a set of headlights, a heavy-duty forklift, its yellow hazard light flashing, emerged from one of the dark buildings. It was carrying a shrink-wrapped pallet of plain brown boxes. It drove to a bright blue shipping container sitting alone in the middle of the yard. A man in a heavy coat unlocked the container. The forklift slid the pallet inside. "Relief aid," I whispered to myself. The forklift went back and got another pallet, and another, all identical. A black pickup truck crunched to a stop at the gate. A man got out, a heavy-set guy in a security jacket. He wasn't looking at the container. He was looking at me. He'd seen my car. He started walking over. My throat closed. "Do not engage." I was supposed to leave, but if I started the car now, he'd know I was watching. He reached my window and rapped on the glass with a gloved knuckle. I rolled it down an inch. The smell of wet wool and cheap cigars hit me. "This is private property," he grunted, his eyes scanning the inside of my car. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," I said, pitching my voice high, letting the panic I felt make it waver. "My phone, the GPS is just awful. I'm trying to find the 291 overpass. I'm supposed to be delivering a catering order. I'm so lost." I was babbling. I held up my phone, showing a random map location. The guard stared at me. His gaze was heavy, suspicious. He looked at my coat, my beat-up dashboard. He looked at my face, pale in the dashboard light. I was just a girl, a cold, lost waitress. Plausible. He grunted again. "This ain't it. You need to go back to the highway. Head south." Thank you so much," I gushed. "Yeah, get out of here." He stepped back. I started the car. As I pulled a U-turn, I watched him in the rearview mirror. He didn't go back to his truck. He stood there, watching me drive away. And then, he pulled his own phone from his pocket. He held it up, and just as I turned the corner, he took a picture of my license plate. I didn't drive back to my apartment. I drove straight to the warehouse. CA's was there, alone, sitting at my steel desk, watching the live feed from my camera on one of the monitors. The video was shaky, the audio full of wind. But it was clear. The forklift, the boxes, the guard. I stood there, shivering, my coat dripping melted snow onto the concrete floor. He watched the whole encounter with the guard. He saw me lie. He saw the guard's suspicion. When the feed finally cut out as I got too far away, he turned the monitor off. The room was silent. "You were calm," he said, his voice quiet. He wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at me. "Your voice trembled, but you didn't panic. You gave him a plausible story. You survived the contact." I just nodded, unable to speak. My adrenaline was crashing. He stood up and walked to a small fridge in the corner. He came back with 2 Cokes and a white paper bag. He sat on the edge of the desk and handed me one. "Ren is tracing the plate check," he said. "The guard will run your license. By morning, Dorset will know your name." My stomach clenched. "What?" "It's fine. Ren is already clouding the data. It will lead them to a different Lila, a different address. But you're on their board now. You were right to come here." He opened the white bag. Cold pizza. From a 24-hour joint down the street, he handed me a slice. We sat there in the vast, cold warehouse, the only light coming from a single green desk lamp. We ate cold pizza, our breath fogged in the air between us. "Why are you doing this, Lila?" he asked. "Not as a boss, as a man. You could have taken the zero balance and vanished." "I don't know," I said, and it was the truth. I looked at the congealed cheese on the pizza. My mom, she worked the night shift at the textile mill for 30 years. Never missed a day. When she got sick, the insurance had a deductible, then co-pays, then gaps. By the time she died, the bills were mountains. I took a shaky breath. I was drowning. What you did, it was a life raft. But that guy, Dorset, he's the one who built the ocean. He's Flashwave. He's the one who preys on people like my mom, people like me. I guess I'm tired of drowning. CA's was silent for a long time, staring at his own slice of pizza. "My father was a docker," he said, his voice so low I had to lean in. "Right here on this pier. He worked for a big shipping line, the kind of company that owned the politicians, owned the cops. One day, a container accidentally slipped. It crushed his leg. He couldn't work. The company lost his pension paperwork. His final paychecks just evaporated." He looked up, and his eyes weren't just watchful anymore. They were full of a cold, ancient fire. He died 6 months later. Not from the leg, from the shame, from being useless, evaporated. He balled up his napkin. "That's what they do. These men, Dorset, they don't just take your money. They take your name. They make you vanish. I don't let people vanish." A new kind of quiet settled between us. It wasn't empty. It was full. It was a shared, fragile understanding. I wasn't his pawn. He wasn't just my savior. We were 2 people whose lives had been shaped by the same ugly shadow. My phone buzzed, rattling on the steel desk. We both tensed. It was another text, unknown number. "You're in too deep. Moreno. The docks drown people." I showed it to CA's. Ren appeared from the shadows. He'd been there the whole time. He took the phone. "Pinged from a tower near Ironwell," Ren said after a moment. "They're confirming you. They know who you are." As if on cue, one of the monitors lit up with a breaking news alert, a local station. "BC agents, acting on a tip from the Metropolitan Organized Crimes Tribunal, have just concluded a major raid on a warehouse in the West End. It wasn't Ironwell. It was a different warehouse, a competitor of Dorset's. The news anchor was breathlessly reporting that agents had found nothing, just empty shelves. The raid was a bust." CA stared at the screen, his jaw tight. "A leak!" "MOCT fed them a bad tip," Ren said, "to make them look foolish, to protect Dorset." "Or to test my reach," CA's murmured. He knew his world was compromised. The BC, the MOCT, someone was playing both sides. He turned to me. The moment of shared history was over. We were back to business. But something had changed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, heavy piece of metal. It was a keychain shaped like an anchor. "Keep this with you," he said. "Always. If you are in trouble, if you are even scared, you press the center. Twice." I took it. It was warm from his hand. "And what Ren appears—" "I appear," CA said. I looked at the little anchor. A small smile touched my lips. "What is this? Like a bat signal?" I expected him to scowl. I expected the mask to fall back into place. Instead, the corner of his mouth twitched. His eyes softened. And for the first time since I'd met him, Casimir Valente smiled. It was small, it was fast, but it was real. Something like that. He said, the city went white. It didn't just snow. It wasn't just wind. Lakefield was being assaulted by a storm that felt personal, a horizontal blast of ice pellets that sounded like sand against the diner's windows. The power had been flickering for an hour. The streetlights were dead. The harbor and grit was an island of wavering yellow light in a sea of darkness. My shift had ended, but the buses weren't running. The streets were a skating rink. I was stranded. Myrtle had already locked herself in the office to fight with the insurance company about a delivery van that had skidded into our dumpster. I stood by the front door, watching the glass frost over. My phone felt heavy in my pocket. I kept touching the little metal anchor keychain CAs had given me. It was a tangible link to the new, insane reality I lived in. If you were even scared, press it. I was scared, but I was also stubborn. This was just weather. I wasn't going to press the bat signal for a snowstorm. My phone buzzed. It wasn't a call, a text from CAs. Stay put. That was it. 2 words. Not are you okay or can you get home? Just stay put, a command. But it landed differently than the threats from Flashwave. It felt solid. 10 minutes later, the unmistakable headlights of Wren's black SUV cut through the whiteout. The vehicle didn't just drive, it crawled, its tires crunching on the ice. It pulled right up to the curb. I grabbed my coat. "Myrtle," I yelled, "my ride's here." She came out, saw the SUV, and her eyes went wide. "That's not a ride, Lila, that's a statement." She grabbed my arm. "You be careful, kid. That water he lives on, it's frozen on top, but the current underneath is fast." I nodded, gave her hand a squeeze, and ran out. The wind ripped the door from my hand. Wren was already out, holding the passenger door open for me. He didn't say a word. I fell into the heated leather seat, gasping. "Where are we going?" I asked, my teeth chattering. "My apartment's power is probably out." "We're not going to your apartment," Wren said, his eyes on the slick road. "It's not secure." He drove to the docks, but he didn't go to the cold brick warehouse. He went further, to a part of the pier I'd never seen, to a massive, low building made of corrugated steel and old brick. A single small sign read, "The Foundry, Essie, 1923. The low rumble I'd mistaken for the storm was coming from inside. It was the thrum of a massive generator. This place had its own power. Wren led me through a heavy steel door into a cavern. It was a workshop, a massive, active ship repair bay. Cranes and chains hung from the ceiling, 30 feet above, lathes and welding stations, all dark, stood like metal dinosaurs. But in the center of the room, there was a circle of warm, bright lights illuminating a modern glass office built right onto the factory floor. CA's was inside, standing over a large digital map displayed on a smart table. Wasn't wearing a suit. He was in dark work pants and a gray Henley that showed the powerful lines of his shoulders and arms. He looked different, less like a CEO, more like a captain on his own ship. He looked up when I came in. The smile he'd shown me in the warehouse wasn't there, but his eyes they scanned me, checking for, I don't know, cracks, fear. "You're cold," he said. It wasn't a question. He grabbed a heavy-knit, dark gray wool sweater from the back of his chair. It was his. I could smell the faint, clean scent of soap and that same hint of coffee and oil. He held it out. "I'm fine," I said, my voice still trembling. He just kept holding it, patient. I sighed, shed my damp coat, and pulled the sweater over my head. It was huge. The sleeves covered my hands. It was incredibly warm. I felt ridiculous. And ridiculously safe. I gave a small, weak smile and a nod. That was all the thanks I could manage. "The storm is giving us an opportunity," he said, now turning back to the map. "The Bicey has pulled its surveillance teams off the roads. Dorset's trucks are running blind." I came to stand beside him, wrapping my arms inside the huge sweater. The map was a live feed of the city's logistics. Dots of light trucks moving in real time. "This is the delivery app," I realized, the same one Riverspan uses. "It is," he he said. I need to know which of these trucks are running the BN5E route tonight. They won't be stopping at Ironwell in this weather. They'll have a contingency, a new drop. I need to know where it is. We bent over the table. The work was familiar. I started cross-referencing manifests, my mind clicking back into the audit. This one, I said, pointing, and this one. They're both marked charitable donations. They're heading for the south side. My finger traced its path. His finger, strong and scarred at the knuckle, moved to trace it with me. And our fingers touched. It was nothing, a brush of skin, but in the cold, quiet foundry, with the generator humming and the ice cracking on the steel roof, it felt like a live wire. My breath hitched. I looked up at him. He had frozen. His eyes were on my face. He wasn't looking at my mouth. He was looking at my eyes. He didn't pull his hand away. He just stopped. Waiting. I didn't pull my hand away either. My heart was doing that slow, painful lurch again. CAs? What? He asked, his voice low. I had to say it. I had to clear the air. I don't do well with this. This? Owing people, I said, my voice coming out shaky. Being controlled. I had a boyfriend once, before my mom got sick. He liked to be in charge. It started with him just helping with my budget. Then he needed my bank password, just to manage things. A few months later, I was asking his permission to buy groceries. I took a sharp breath. I hate this feeling, being under someone's thumb. I hate feeling like I'm a piece on a board. I looked down at our hands, still almost touching on the map. You paid my debt. You gave me this job. You put me in your sweater. I feel like I'm being managed. CAs turned fully toward me. He looked at me for a long, long time. The warm lights cast shadows under his cheekbones. When you were at the diner, he said, his voice quiet but intense. Did you have the right to tell a customer no? What I mean, no, not really. The customer is always... Right, he finished. When you were with Flashwave, did you have the right to say no? They were going to garnish my wages. When you were with your old boyfriend, could you say no? I just looked at him, my throat tight. He met my gaze. Here in this building, with me, you have the right to say no. You always have the right to say no. Do you understand that? I swallowed. He wasn't just saying words. He was making a vow. Yes, I understand. Good. The tension broke, but it was replaced by something else, something thicker. A sound came from a small, vintage radio on a shelf. It was playing low, an old soul station. The sound was warm, crackling. Sam Cooke. The wind howled outside. The ice pinged against the metal roof. The river churned against the pilings under the building. And in our little circle of light, there was just this music. I gave a small, nervous laugh. This is a strange night. CAs looked at the radio. It's just a storm. No, us, eating cold pizza in a warehouse, hiding from bad guys in a storm. I pulled the giant sleeves over my hands. It's like a weird movie. He looked at me, a softness in his eyes I hadn't seen before. My father used to bring me here. He said, when he was fixing the tugboats, he put on the radio. He'd try to get my mother to dance, right here, between the lathes. I smiled. Did she? Never. She said it wasn't proper. A quiet fell again. The song was slow, mournful, beautiful. Well, I said, feeling bold in his sweater, I'm not your mother. I stepped back and did a clumsy little shuffle. A box step I'd seen in an old movie. It was ridiculous. I was a waitress in a borrowed sweater, dancing in a shipyard. He watched me, and the smile came back, that tiny, rare, real smile. He shook his head. You're terrible. You're one to talk, I shot back. I bet you're worse. I am, he said, but he stepped toward me. He didn't take me in his arms. He just took my hand, the one that had touched his on the map. His grip was warm and firm. He led me in a slow, awkward circle. We weren't dancing. We were just moving. Together. In time with the music, his other hand rested lightly on my back, over the thick wool. I could feel the heat of his palm. The song ended. We stopped. We were standing very close. His smile faded, replaced by that same intensity. He didn't let go of my hand. His other hand was still on my back. "Lila," he whispered. My heart was beating in my throat. I looked up at him. His eyes searched mine. This was it. This was the moment. He was asking. He wasn't touching. He was asking. I gave the smallest nod, a tiny tilt of my chin. He dipped his head slowly. He was giving me time to say no. I rose up on my toes, just that little bit. I met him. His lips were soft, not at all what I expected. The kiss was slow, it was careful, it was a question. It wasn't hungry or desperate, it was respectful. It was just warmth, and the faint taste of coffee, and the smell of the cold night air on his skin. It was a promise. The promise he'd just made. You have the right to say no. And I was saying yes. We stayed like that for a long moment. The world just the sound of the generator and the crackle of the radio. He pulled back first, but only an inch. He rested his forehead against mine. His breathing was as unsteady as mine. I put my hands on his chest. I could feel his heart beating steady and strong beneath my palms. "We aren't safe yet," I whispered. It wasn't an accusation. It was a fact. He let out a long breath. It fogged in the air between us. "I know." He paused, then said, "We'll protect this. This, not me, not him, the space between us." A loud, sharp on the glass of the office door made us jump apart. Ren was standing there, his face grim, silhouetted against the dark foundry. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked urgent. CA's was instantly back to business. The mask was on. "What?" "The driver," Ren said, opening the door. "The Riverspan driver you were tracking. Lila, the one you were supposed to audit tomorrow. He's gone." "Gone," I said, pulling the sweater tighter. "Like quit." Ren shook his head. "Like vanished. His truck was found abandoned in a snowdrift off the I-90. Engine running. Cab empty. Phone on the seat. He's gone." CA's looked at me. The warmth was gone. The cold reality was back. The man I was going to interview, the key witness to the Ironwell deliveries, had been disappeared. CA's turned to me. "You're not going back to your apartment. Not tonight. Not ever." He grabbed a set of keys from his desk. "Ren, stay here. Coordinate with our men on the south side. Find out where that truck is going." "Where are we going?" I asked, following him out into the howling storm. "Somewhere you can't be found." He moved me to a place I never knew existed, a penthouse apartment in a sleek, black glass building overlooking the river. It was the opposite of my apartment. It was silent. The windows were thick, the carpets plush. It was beautiful. And it was a cage. "No one knows about this place but me and Ren," he said, placing a key card on the marble counter. "Stay here. Don't leave." "For how long?" "Until the driver is found. Until I know what Dorset is playing at." He looked at me, his face hard again. He took a step toward me, like he was going to touch me. He stopped. "Be safe, Lila," he said, and then he was gone. I was alone. I stood at the massive window, looking down at the frozen city. The storm was stopping. The clouds were breaking. The city was silent, covered in a blanket of white. My phone buzzed, a text from CA's. I meant what I said. You are a person, not data. I sat on the luxurious sofa, my hand closing around the anchor keychain. I typed back, "I know. Thank you for asking. Before you I couldn't type kissed. Before you touched." His reply was almost instant. "Always." I must have fallen asleep because I woke to the morning light. My phone was buzzing with notifications, news alerts, a local blog, the Lakefield Ledger had just posted a story. My stomach turned to ice. The headline, "Valente's new recruit whistleblower alleges Doc's boss using debt-clearing tactics to recruit vulnerable workers." The article was vague. It cited anonymous sources close to the Dorset organization. It painted a picture of a predatory boss who bought employees by paying off their predatory loans, using them as pawns in his war. They were twisting it. They were taking his one act of humanity and turning it into a weapon. They were writing my story, and they were getting it all wrong. I stood up, anger a hot spike in my chest. "No," I said to the empty room. "You don't get to tell my story." My phone buzzed again. It wasn't a news alert, it was a calendar invite from an unknown address. Event restructure planning, BN5E, location Turn Pier, tonight, 11 p.m. Turn Pier, I'd seen it on the maps, a derelict, abandoned ferry terminal on the other side of the river, a place no one ever went. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons, and it felt like a trap. The calendar invite on my phone was a blinking cursor. Turn Pier, 11 p.m. I was still in the glass tower apartment, a prisoner of Cass's protection. The Lakefield Ledger article was open on my laptop. Valente's new recruit debt-clearing tactics, vulnerable workers. They were painting me as a victim, a pawn, a brainwashed girl bought and paid for. They were telling my story, and they were getting it wrong. This invite wasn't a trap, or rather, it was more than a trap. It was a summons. They were calling me out by name. Restructure planning, BN5E, my route, my discovery. I called CA's. He picked up on the first ring. "You're not going," he said. His voice was flat. "I didn't ask." "Lila, it's an obvious trap. Dorset knows you found Ironwell. He's cut off that route, so he's opening a new one. He's inviting you to the christening." "I know, and I'm going." "No, you're staying put. That's final." "You said I had the right to say no," I shot back, my voice shaking with an anger that surprised me. "I'm saying no. I am saying no to this beautiful, silent, safe apartment. That article, they're calling me your whore. CA's, in polite language, but that's what it means. If I hide now, they're right. I'm just a girl you paid for. I am not going to let them write that story for me." The silence on the line stretched, thick and heavy. I could hear him breathing. "Fine," he finally said. The word was clipped. "But not alone, not your way. My way. Ren will be your shadow. He'll be on Overwatch. You'll wear the chest camera. You are observation only. Lila, you get the data, and you get out. The second you feel it's wrong, you press the anchor. Do you understand me?" "I understand," I said, but I knew he was wrong about one thing. I wasn't just going for data. I was going for answers. Turn Pier was a graveyard. The old ferry terminal was a skeleton of rust and broken glass, silhouetted against the oily black water. The only light came from a few high-mass sodium lamps, flickering a sick, buzzing orange. They cast long, distorted shadows that looked like grasping hands. The air smelled of low tide, diesel, and decay. Ren dropped me 2 blocks away. He was all business. "I'm on the roof of the cannery across the channel. I have a clear line of sight with a night vision scope. If anyone breathes on you, I'm moving. Don't be a hero. Moreno, get the film and get out." "Got it." I clipped the tiny new camera to the inside of my dark jacket. The anchor keychain was in my left fist, my thumb resting on the button. I slipped through a gap in the chain-link fence. My sneakers were silent on the cracked pavement. I moved low, using the shadows of old, rusted-out trucks as cover. The main terminal building was dark, but out on the pier itself, under the buzzing orange lights, sat a single, bright blue shipping container. The BN5E container, the same one from Ironwell. The stenciling on the side was fresh disaster relief, Dominican Republic. My heart was a fist, pounding against my ribs. It's a trap. It's a trap. The container's heavy locking bar wasn't sealed. It was just hanging, an invitation. I had to know. I took a deep breath, moved into the light, and pulled the heavy steel door. It groaned, the sound echoing across the water. I stepped inside, my phone's flashlight cutting a weak beam. It wasn't medical supplies. It wasn't weapons. It was electronics. Dozens of cardboard boxes filled with offline point-of-sale terminals. Square, battery-powered credit card readers. In the back, there were 3 wooden crates. I used the edge of my anchor keychain to pry one open. My blood went cold. Gift cards. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. Stacks and stacks of unactuated plastic, still in their wrappers. Starbucks, Home Depot, Visa, Amazon. This was the Green Gate. It was brilliant. They weren't moving cash, they were converting it. They used the predatory data from apps like Flashwave to get access to thousands of low-limit credit cards, desperate people. They'd max them out, buying these gift cards, then they'd ship the clean cards overseas, sell them for pennies on the dollar, and the money was washed, untraceable. I heard an engine. I clicked off my flashlight. I moved to the edge of the container, pressing my back against the cold, corrugated steel. I activated the camera. A black pickup truck crunched to a stop at the end of the pier. 4 men got out. One was younger than the others, wearing a pea coat that probably cost more than my mother's entire hospital stay. He looked bored and annoyed. "This is the spot," he called out, his voice sharp. "It stinks." "This is it, mister." "Quinn," another man said. "The new BN5E drop, just like you wanted." "I wanted it quiet." Quinn Dorset snapped. "This is exposed. I don't care what my cousin says. We should be running this through the Orchard Gate portal, the digital bank. This is analog. It's sloppy." Orchard Gate, the name, the shadow bank. My camera was recording everything. I knew I had enough. I had to leave. I started to edge back, toward the shadows behind the container. My foot came down on a loose piece of gravel. It skittered, a tiny sound, but in the silence, it was as loud as a gunshot. Everything stopped. "Who's there?" Quinn called out. I held my breath. A shadow detached itself from the other side of the container. A 5th person. Someone who had been there the whole time, waiting. A hand clamped onto my wrist. The grip was like a steel trap. Well, a low, cold voice said, amusement rippling through it. "It's the diner girl. You lost—" A woman. She was tall, lean, with short, dark hair and eyes that looked like chips of ice in the orange light. Juno Creed, Dorset's port manager. My blood turned to ice. My free hand was in my pocket. My thumb slammed down on the anchor. Twice. Juno saw the movement. "Clever," she hissed, and yanked my arm. Across the channel, a small, bright light flashed twice. Wren. A loud hiss came from the entrance to the pier. A canister skittered across the pavement and erupted. Thick silver smoke poured out, not tear gas, just a massive cloud of obscurity. "What the hell?" Quinn yelled. "Grab her!" Juno yanked my arm, pulling me off balance. I twisted, slamming my shoulder into her, not to hurt her, but to get a half-second of slack. My other hand ripped the camera from my jacket. I saw a dark, round hole in the concrete, piling next to me a storm drain, just above the water line. "Stupid girl," Juno snarled. I shoved the tiny memory card, my life, my leverage deep into the pipe. My fingers scraped rust, but it was in... Juno grabbed a handful of my hair and threw me to the pavement. And then he was there. CA's. He exploded out of the smoke. He didn't yell. He didn't run for me. He moved like a brawler. He grabbed a massive cargo hook on a chain and threw it, sending it smashing into a stack of oil drums. They toppled, rolling and crashing, cutting off Juno from Quinn's other men. Wren dropped from a dark walkway above, landing like a cat. He didn't engage. He just became a wall between us and the pickup truck. It was chaos, not a gunfight, a dockfight, shouts, the clang of metal, the scrape of boots. CA's grabbed my arm. His hand was shaking, or maybe I was. He hauled me to my feet. "I said observe," he roared, his voice cutting through the noise. "You didn't tell me about Turn Pier," I yelled back, ripping my arm from his grasp. "You knew you were hiding this." The smoke was already thinning. We were in a standoff. CA's and Wren, me and Quinn, Juno, and their 2 other men. Quinn Dorset brushed the smoke particles off his expensive coat. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Well, look at this. The Doc's new couple." He sneered at CA's. "Very dramatic. How long do you give it?" "Valente. A week." A month before she's just another liability, you have to disappear. Juno Creed just watched me. Her cold eyes flickered to the drainpipe where I'd hidden the card. She knew. She'd seen it. Quinn's phone rang, a tinny, classical tune. He answered it, putting it on speaker. Yeah. Pull them out, a low, gravelly voice said, the voice of the old man. But we have her. I said pull them out, let him have the girl, and leave the container. Let him see what he's up against. Fine, Quinn snapped. He hung up. He looked at CA's. Your lucky night, the old man says to let you go. He gestured to the open container. Consider this a free sample, a warning. He smiled at me. As for that driver you were so interested in, the one who vanished, he's off the board, permanently. They got in their truck, they didn't run, they strolled, they got in, started the engine, and drove calmly off the pier. Silence. The only sound was the water lapping at the pilings and the buzz of the sodium lamps. Cass's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, looked at the screen. MOCT, Financial Division. He answered, his voice pure ice. Valente. A tinny voice on the other end. Mr. Valente. We received an anonymous tip about activity at Turn Pier. We're sending a unit. We'll secure the container. Let us handle it from here. CA's hung up without a word. He looked at me, his face a mask of cold fury. They were waiting. They weren't coming to stop Dorset. They were coming to collect. I ignored him. I walked to the piling. I knelt on the wet concrete, my jeans soaking through with icy, filthy water. I shoved my hand into the drain pipe. Lila, what are you doing? We're leaving now. The data. I grunted. My fingers were numb. The pipe was lined with slime and rust. I didn't let them get it. My fingers brushed the small, plastic square. I grasped it, pulled it out. It was covered in grime, but it was safe. I stood up, my whole body shaking. I held it up in my palm. The data. Orchard Gate. The gift cards. It's all on here. We were in the SUV. Ren driving, the heater blasting. I couldn't stop shivering. CA's and I were in the back, the silence between us as cold as the river. That was the single stupidest, most reckless thing I have ever seen, CA's said, his voice low and tight. He was looking straight ahead. Oh, now you're worried about me, I snapped. Or are you worried about your asset? You lied to me. You knew about Turn Pier. You knew about this entire operation. You've been auditing me, not Riverspan. You've been testing me. I was protecting you, he shot back, turning to me. You're a waitress. Lila, you don't walk into a meet with Juno Creed. You don't know what these people are. And you don't get to decide that you don't get to put me in a glass tower and tell me to stay put because you think I'll break. I am not a thing. CA's, I am not property you protect. My voice cracked. You said I had the right to say no. I'm saying no to that. I am not your pawn. The silence that followed was heavy. Ren's eyes flicked to us in the rearview mirror, then back to the road. We were crossing the Lakefield Bridge. The lights of the city spread out below us like a carpet of jewels. A beautiful lie. CA's let out a long, slow breath. He rubbed his eyes, then his face. When he looked at me, the fury was gone. He just looked exhausted. You're right, he said. I blinked. What? You're right. He turned in his seat to face me. I was protecting the asset, not the person. That's what my father's bosses did. That's what Dorset does. I won't be that. The anger drained out of me, leaving me as empty and cold as the pier. I'm sorry, I whispered. I shouldn't have gone alone. I saw that article. They were writing my story. I just wanted to hold the pen. He nodded, a deep, slow understanding passing between us. From now on, he said, and it felt like another vow. Any plan that involves you get the green light. You're not just observation. You're command. Agreed. Agreed, I said. We've got a tail, Ren said, his voice calm. I whipped around, a small, dark coupe. It had been with us for 3 blocks. Dorset, I whispered. No, CA said, his eyes narrowed, watching it. Not his style. This is something else. Ren took a sharp right, then an immediate left. The coupe stayed with us. Ren took another right, this time into a narrow, unlit alley. The coupe sped past the alley entrance, missing the turn. "It's gone," Ren said. CAs looked at me, his face grim in the dashboard light. "This isn't just the docks anymore. Lila, this is bigger." The noise from the Lakefield Ledger article was a dull roar in the background of my life, but the tale we'd lost, that was different. That was a sharp, clear threat. The game wasn't just on the docks, it was on the airwaves. The story painting me as a vulnerable worker was just the setup. The follow-up was the knockout punch. Anonymous insiders started whispering to any reporter who would listen. They said Valente's operation was suspiciously clean. They said the Metropolitan Organized Crimes Tribunal, the MOCT, hadn't brought him in for one simple reason: CAs was working for them. He was an informant. It was a brilliant lie, designed to sever him from his own ecosystem. A man who talks to the feds is a man alone. Then they came back for me. The Ledger published a follow-up. They had found the name of the company that paid my utility bills, Civic Ease Pay. They'd filed a public information request. Who is the benefactor behind Civic Ease Pay? Who paid Lila Moreno's bills? Ren intercepted the reply before it went public. Civic Ease Pay's legal team, a small firm on Cass's payroll, sent back a terse response. "We are unable to release that information. The account in question has been sealed under a witness protection directive by the Triune Ethics Board." The Triune Ethics Board, a name CAs had invented, a legal firewall built from air. But to the press, it was a government-level cover-up. I wasn't just a victim. I was a protected witness. My name was no longer just mud. It was radioactive. And then, the tale we'd lost showed its face. It wasn't Dorset's crew. It was BC. A sharply dressed man with a polite smile handed me a summons at the door of the foundry. It wasn't an arrest warrant, it was a subpoena. Lila Moreno is required to appear before a closed hearing regarding the ongoing investigation into Riverspan Logistics and associated financial entities. I was sitting in the glass office, staring at the paper, when Ren laid out the options. CAs was pointedly absent, working on the main floor, giving me the space. "You have two choices," Ren said, his voice as flat as the steel desk. "1, we make you disappear. New name, new state. CAs can have you on a plane in an hour. You'll be safe. This all goes away." "And 2, I asked. "You go." I looked down at the paper. They were all still writing my story. The Ledger, Dorset. And now, BC. "I go," I said. My voice didn't shake. "I'm tired of them talking about me. They can talk to me." Ren gave a single, sharp nod. He'd known what I would choose. The hearing room wasn't a court. It was a gray, windowless conference room on the 12th floor of the federal building. Gray carpet, gray walls, a long, polished table, 3 investigators, 2 men, 1 woman. They looked bored, like this was just paperwork. "Miss Moreno," the woman began, "we're just trying to establish a timeline." They asked about the diner, about the receipt. I told them the absolute truth. Yes, I threw it out. It was a total accident. I was exhausted. And then, coincidentally, the man to her left said, "Your extensive 5-figure debts were cleared, just vanished." "Yes. Paid by Flashwave's new humanitarian program, and your utilities by Civic Ease Pay, and your late rent fee waived." "Yes," I said. "Who is Civic Ease Pay? Miss Moreno." "I don't know," I lied. The man leaned forward. "Let's talk about Flashwave. You were their customer." "I was their target," I corrected him. The temperature in the room dropped a few degrees. The woman looked up from her notes. "Explain." This was it. This was my ground. This I knew. "Flashwave isn't a loan company," I said, leaning forward. "It's a data mining operation. It's a predatory algorithm." They were listening now. All 3 of them. "Your team should check their push notification logs," I said, my voice steady. "They don't send offers at 5 in the afternoon. They send last chance alerts at 2 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock And 4, when you're alone, exhausted, terrified, and your defenses are at 0, when you'll click yes to anything just to make the noise stop. The third investigator, the one who had been silent, looked up. You seem to know a lot about their internal metrics. I know what it feels like to be on the receiving end. Check their app permissions. I pushed on, the words flowing. They scrape location data. If the app pings your phone at a hospital, a chemo clinic, or a funeral home, your risk score skyrockets. Your interest rate triples. They don't loan to the desperate, they hunt the desperate. They sell those risk scores to other predators. The room was dead silent. The woman finally spoke, her voice sharp, cutting through the silence. Who paid the debt? Miss Moreno. We know it wasn't you. We know you don't have $18,000. Was it Casimir Valente? This was the question, the trap. I looked her right in the eye, unflinching. My debt was paid by someone who hates injustice, someone who believes a person's life shouldn't be decided by a piece of software. If you're looking for a criminal, you should be looking at Flashwave's code, not at me. They let me go, just like that. We'll be in touch. I walked out of the conference room, my knees shaking. The adrenaline was fading. And she was there. Juno Creed, leaning against the wall by the elevators as if she owned the building. She wasn't in dock gear. She wore a perfectly tailored black pantsuit and a cold, knowing smile. That was quite a performance, and she said, her voice laced with amusement. I ignored her and walked toward the elevator, my hand instinctively closing around the anchor keychain in my pocket. You're good, she continued, falling into step beside me. The voice of the people. Very compelling, but you're still just a girl from a diner, playing in a league that's way over your head. The elevator doors opened. We both stepped in. She didn't press a button. What do you want, Juno? I'm here to offer you an exit ramp, she said. Quinn Dorset, he's just the muscle. His younger brother is the one who runs Orchard Gate, the digital side, the real bank. He's impressed with you. He thinks Valente is a relic, all docs and steel. The future is data. Your future. My future, I repeated, my voice flat. He wants to meet, he's offering well, let's call it real freedom, a job, not an internship. You'll have power, real resources, and you won't be tied to a sinking ship. The door slid open to the lobby. No, thank you, I said, stepping out. No, she followed me, sounding genuinely surprised. You're choosing him, Valente. Why? Because he paid your bills, because he kissed you in a storm. My blood turned to ice. I stopped dead. How could she possibly know that? Juno saw the look on my face and laughed, a low, cold sound. Oh, honey, we're always watching. That tail you thought you lost the other night, the little coupe that wasn't BC, that was us. We just let you think you lost it. We were testing his reflexes. She stepped in front of me, blocking me from the glass doors. Listen to me, she said, her voice dropping, losing all its mockery. Valente doesn't want an equal. He needs a symbol. He needs you as a moral shield. He's a gangster, Lila. And when the time comes, when he has to choose between his operation and you, he will never, ever let you be the one to make the final call. I looked past her, through the glass, across the street. CA's, and he was standing there, by the black SUV. He wasn't interfering, he wasn't running to save me, he was just watching. He was waiting. He was letting me handle it. He trusts me, I said, my voice low. Juno smiled, a sad, pitying look. He trusts you to be his... There's a difference. She held out a business card, just a name. Orchard Gate Financial. When you realize I'm right, call me. She turned and walked away. I crossed the street. CA's opened the passenger door. We drove in silence. He didn't ask what she said. He didn't ask about the hearing. He just drove. The city slipping by. We went back to the foundry. That night, we were in the glass office. I was staring at the data from the Turn Pier card. He broke the silence. If you ever want to leave, he said, I'll open the door. I looked up. He was standing by the window, watching the dark water. He was serious. Juno said you needed a moral shield. I said, he didn't flinch. I've never had one before. It's nice. He turned to me. But it's not a cage. If you want to walk away, Lila, I will personally drive you to the airport. Your file here will be deleted. You'll have a new name, a new life, and enough money to never look back. I mean it. The door is open. I stared at him. The power dynamic. The thing I hated. The thing my ex had used. The thing Juno had just warned me about. He won't let you decide. But CA's he was different. He kept giving the power back to me. Every time I set a boundary, he didn't just respect it, he reinforced it. I hate that language, I said, standing up. The language of letting me go, of opening the door, as if you're the one who holds the key. He flinched, just slightly. He knew I was right. I don't want an open door. CA's, I said. I want a contract. I want my role here, my title, my responsibilities and my authority written down on paper. I want green light to mean green light. I want it signed, and I want my own lawyer to hold a copy. I expected him to argue, to say it was a matter of trust. He just nodded. Okay. He went to his desk, typed for 10 minutes, and hit print. 2 pages slid out. He slid them over to me. It was simple. It was clear. Lila Moreno, Director of Data Audits and Special Operations. Full authority over routes BN5E and all associated financial portals. Possesses final go/no-go authority on any operation she is a part of. He signed both copies. Get your lawyer, he said. I'll wait. An hour later, it was done. I had a legal aid lawyer I'd used for my mom's estate review the document. She was confused, but confirmed it was ironclad. My copy was secure. I had an exit strategy, a legal one. The tension that had been building for weeks finally broke. I was his equal, on paper. That night, we didn't order pizza. I found a hot plate and a small fridge in the foundry's break room. I'd brought groceries on the way back from the lawyers. I chopped carrots and onions on a steel workbench. CA stood next to me, quietly peeling potatoes. The sounds were simple. The thwack of the knife, the scrape of the peeler, the hiss of steam from a pot of water. It was the most normal, the most real moment we had ever shared. We ate vegetable soup out of coffee mugs, sitting on stools in the break room. You were good today, he said quietly. In the hearing, Ren sent me the audio. You were strong. I just told the truth, I said, sipping the soup. It was hot, and it warmed me from the inside out. After we stood by the door of the glass office, the silence was different now. Comfortable. Easy. Lila, he said. I looked up. He didn't just grab me. He didn't just lean in. He put his hand on my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. His eyes asked the question. He was remembering his promise. I leaned into his touch. I said yes. This kiss wasn't like the first one. That one was hesitant, a question. This was an answer. It was deep. It was slow. It was a confirmation. It wasn't about control or power. It was about acceptance. I put my hand on his chest, right over his heart. I could feel it. A steady, strong thump-thump that matched my own. His other hand went to my waist, pulling me close. It was warm and firm and respectful. My lips parted. I felt the warmth of his breath. The world narrowed to just this, the smell of soap and steel, the solid wall of his chest, the steady beat of his heart. A phone buzzed. Not his, mine. I pulled back, breathing hard. He didn't let me go, just rested his forehead against mine. I fumbled for my phone. It was a text, encrypted, a number I didn't know. BN5E is live again. They're stupid. They're going back. Tomorrow night, Ironwell Yards. This is your shot at Orchard Gate. A friend. I showed it to CA's. His eyes hardened. Ironwell, he breathed. They're moving. This is it. The text from the anonymous friend was a clean, sharp shock. Tomorrow night, Ironwell Yards. They were sloppy, or they were arrogant. Maybe both. CA's believed they were desperate. Orchard Gate is moving its assets, CA's said, his voice flat. We were in the foundry, the big workshop lights casting a harsh glare over the digital map of Ironwell. They can't use the ports right now, not after Turn Pier, so they're falling back to their original blind warehouse. He looked at me. This is it, Lila. This is our one shot to link the charitable donations directly to the Orchard Gate servers. Wren stood by the door. 2 new faces were with us at the table. A woman with restless, fast-moving eyes and brightly dyed hair, who CA's introduced as Aya, his data specialist, and a man named Booker, who was built like a mountain but had the calm, steady hands of a surgeon. He was the network and drone engineer. CA's pointed to the center of the map, Operation Crane Light. My eyes went to the massive 60-ton gantry crane that dominated the yard. It's old, it's analog, and it's our front door. CA's said, Booker has access to its wireless PLC. The planned Dorset's truck parks under the gantry for processing. Before they can move the container, Booker hits the switch. I'll be on the gantry itself. I won't drop the hook. I'll drop the magnetic clamp. A 60-ton magnet will pin that container to the concrete. It won't hold them forever, but it will buy Aya and Booker time to get the panel van in range, punch through the container's firewall, and pull the data directly from the POS terminals inside. Where am I asked. You're here, CA's said, tapping the foundry on the map, coordinating safely. I looked at the contract in my pocket. I looked at him. No, I said. Wren tensed. Aya and Booker just stared. My contract, CA's, final go/no-go authority on any operation I'm a part of. I'm not coordinating from a mile away. I'm in the van. I'm the one who knows what the data looks like. I'm the one who knows the file structure. I took a breath, my idea forming, and I'll be on 2 comms, one for us and one for an open leak channel. Juno's already monitoring us. Let's give her something to listen to. I'll pretend to be an Orchard Gate buyer, confirming the shipment. It'll be a smokescreen. They'll be listening to me, not for you. CA's stared at me. The silence stretched. He was measuring me, testing my resolve. He finally gave a single, sharp nod. All right, in the van. But you are hardwired to Wren. The second he says out, you are out. Understood. Understood. The night was bitter cold. A light, dry snow was falling, squeaking under our boots, our panel van plain, white. Anonymous was parked in a stand of dead trees overlooking the yard. The inside was a nest of glowing monitors. Booker was at the pilot station. Aya was surrounded by keyboards. I sat between them, 2 headsets clamped over my ears. Channel 1, our team. Channel 2, the open line. Wren was a ghost on the perimeter. CA's was already in position, a dark shape in the high steel lattice of the gantry. Drone is up, Booker said, his voice calm. No heat signatures. We're clean. The monitor flickered, showing a high-altitude, night vision view of the yards, movement, highway, 3 trucks all marked donations. Aya's fingers flew. Manifests are identical. Same declared weight, same origin. It's a shell game. 2 are decoys. 1 is the real deal. We'll have to grab all 3, Cass's voice said, low and tense in my ear. No, I said, leaning into my monitor, my heart hammering. We don't have time. Look, checkpoint 3, the main gate. I zoomed the drone feed. They have an automated scanner, but there's a blind spot, right by that pile of scrap metal, a camera shadow. So, Booker asked. So look at the reflectors on the gate posts, I said, my mind racing. The system uses them to align the trucks for the scanner. If you move just one, you could force a truck to misalign. It would force the driver to reposition. The decoy drivers will just follow the machine. But the real driver, he'll be the one who knows about the blind spot. He'll be the one who uses the error to pull his truck into the shadow. Just in case. He'll identify himself for us. Silence. Then Cass's voice, tight with something I couldn't place surprise. Maybe. Lila, that's brilliant. Wren. You heard her? Move the reflector. We watched on the drone feed. A shadow detached from another shadow, darted across the open space, and nudged a small, mirrored square on the gatepost. Wren was gone before the dust settled. The first truck approached, paused at the scanner, scanned, passed. The second truck, paused, scanned, passed. The third truck, it slowed, the driver clearly confused by the alignment error. We could see him gesturing, cursing at his dashboard. Then he visibly made a choice, and he didn't realign. He cranked the wheel hard, pulling the truck sharp right, perfectly into the camera's blind spot. He sat there for a moment, hidden. "That's our boy," I whispered. The truck pulled out of the shadow and rolled to a stop, directly under the gantry. The driver hopped out. "Now, Booker," CA's ordered. Booker hit the key. The sound hit us a second later, a deep, resonant clang that echoed across the yard. On the monitor, the massive magnetic clamp had dropped, locking onto the container. The truck groaned, its suspension compressing. The driver looked up, his cigarette falling from his mouth. "Go!" Aya yelled, her hands a blur on the keyboard. "Van is moving," Booker said, the engine rumbling to life. "I'm in!" Aya shouted. "Past the firewall, accessing the terminal. Wait." "What?" I said, my blood turning to ice. "Movement," Booker snapped. "West gate. 4, no, 5 vehicles. They're coming in hot." A voice crackled to life in my other headset. Channel 2, Juno. "Cute. Lila," she said, her voice laced with amusement. "That reflector trick. Very smart. Did you really think we wouldn't have a response team? Did you think we wouldn't be listening?" A single red flare shot into the sky, bathing the entire yard in a hellish, chemical light. "Juno's here," I yelled into Channel 1. "They're blocking the main exit." Ren's voice, calm as ever. "I see them. I'm moving." He was going to block their exit, trapping us all in the yard. The snow swirled, red and ghostly. "Aya, talk to me," I yelled. "Wait, it's a kill switch," she screamed, her voice high with panic. "The whole system is wired to the truck's external power. If they cut the power, if we lose the connection, the data self-wipes. It's a logic bomb. I need at least 2 minutes to download. We don't have 2 seconds. They're already at the cab." "Buy me time," I ripped off both headsets. "Lila, no, stay in the van," Booker yelled. I grabbed a small, heavy toolkit from the wall. My call. Booker green light. I shoved the side door open and ran. The cold hit me like a wall. I stayed low, sprinting through the red-lit snow, the shouts of men echoing around me. CA's was on the gantry, yelling, throwing pieces of scrap metal down, a one-man diversion. I slid on the ice, catching myself, and dove under the truck, rolling onto my back. The smell of hot diesel and ozone from the magnet was overwhelming. I found the power coupling, a thick bundle of wires. The kill switch would be there. I snapped on my penlight. There, the main line. And next to it, what I was looking for. A small 6-pin diagnostic port, a backup. "Aya," I yelled into the small radio on my jacket. "I'm at the coupling. I'm going to try to jump the diagnostic port. Talk to me how long." "Lila, get out of there," Cass's voice roared from above. 90 seconds, I yelled back, my fingers clumsy with cold. "Aya, talk to me." Okay, her voice, tinny and terrified, came back. "If you can find the aux power, it has to be pin 3. Jump the main positive to pin 3. It might create a stable bypass." My fingers fumbled with the toolkit. I snapped an alligator clip onto the hot, positive lead. I took the other end, aimed for the tiny pin. Doing it now. I jammed the clip onto the pin. A shower of blue sparks exploded in my face, stinging my cheeks. I screamed, but held it. "We have a stream," Booker's voice screamed in my ear. "It's working." "Lila, it's bypassing the switch. Download initiated 20%, 30%. A pair of heavy black boots landed next to my head. I froze. I looked up from under the truck. Juno Creed. She was holding a heavy wrench, looking down at me with something almost like respect. "You just don't quit, do you?" she said. Then CA's was there. He dropped from the gantry. Landing between me and Juno, he and Juno faced each other. The red flare was dying, plunging the yard back into the sick orange light of the sodium lamps. They were just 2 shadows. "The driver," CA said, his voice a low growl. "The riverspan driver you took. My man. Where is he? 80%, Booker yelled. Juno just smiled, thin and cold. He's where all loose ends go. Valente, you know that. Find him yourself. You're done, Juno, CA said. Am I? She replied. And then a new sound, faint, then rising, not one, a dozen sirens. 100%, Booker screamed. We have the package. We have it all, Lila. Go. Juno's smile faded. She looked confused. She hadn't called them. MOCT. CA's breathed, and he looked right at me. They got a tip. Not ours. They're coming in hot. Wren's voice. CA's, they're at the main gate. This is not a friendly response. They are not here to talk. CA's looked at me. The noise, the sirens, the snow, the shouting, it all faded. It was just his eyes. Lila, your call. My contract. We run. We keep the data. And we fight them in the shadows. Or we go public. Right now. Your green light. I looked at Juno. I looked at the approaching lights. I looked at CA's. Public, I said. My voice was shaking from the adrenaline, but my gaze was clear. But our way, not theirs. I pointed at Juno. They came for her. They came for you. They're all dirty. Send it. Send the whole package. The gift cards, the timestamps, the link to Flashwave, the Orchard Gate files. Send it all to the Lakefield Ledger. CA's tapped his comm. Booker, you heard her. Burn the package. Send it to the Ledger's public drop. Now. Done. Booker's voice came back. It's sent. It's gone. We have to go. This isn't over, Juno hissed, backing into the shadows. We're leaving, CA said, grabbing my arm, pulling me out from under the truck. We ran. Ren melted out of the darkness to join us, and the three of us sprinted for the far fence as the first MOCT cars burst into the yard. We piled into the van, tires spinning on the ice. As we sped away, Juno's team was already gone. She didn't run. She just stood in the chaos, watching us go. We ditched the van at the rendezvous. We were just walking, 2 people in the snow, when a figure stepped out of an alley. Juno, alone. CA's moved in front of me. Don't, she said, holding up a hand. I'm just here to deliver a message. She looked at me, her eyes tired. You did well, diner girl. You're a player, but I told you once, one day, you'll realize he can't belong to anyone. Not to you, not to the docks. He's a ghost. I met her cold gaze. I don't need to own him, I said, my voice quiet, steady. I need a partner. Juno's expression flickered. It was the first time I'd ever surprised her. She nodded. Once. Good luck with that. And she vanished back into the snow. We didn't speak on the drive back to the glass tower. The adrenaline from the Ironwell heist was a poison in my veins, making my hands shake and my heart feel too big for my chest. The data was sent. The ledger had it. The city was about to explode. We walked into the silent penthouse apartment. We were both covered in grime and snow, smelling of ozone and fear. I could feel the tension coming off CA's in waves. He was angry. Not at me, but at the MOCT, at Juno, at the fact he'd been outmaneuvered. I dropped my bag, the body cam and the heavy toolkit on the floor. I was exhausted, but I was also wired. I spoke first, my voice hoarse. We did it! CA's just nodded, running a hand through his hair, leaving a black streak of grease from the gantry. We did, and now the real fight starts. He started to pace, a caged animal. Dorset will retaliate. The MOCT will move to contain the leak. The Bici will... CA's? He stopped. He looked at me. Before that, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Before the next storm, we need to talk. Lila, we don't have time to... We need to make time. I need to shed this armor. We both do. He understood. The restless energy left him, replaced by a deep weariness. He sat on the arm of the sofa. You're right. What do you need to say? Juno's warning, the Ledger article, the way they're painting me. I can't be in this whatever this is if I'm just a moral shield or a pawn. I can't be your vulnerable worker. And I can't be your girlfriend as a tactic. He looked at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. You think that's what this is? Won't. I don't know, I said, and it was the honest truth. I know what it felt like at the foundry, but that was adrenaline and a storm and a near-death experience. This is real life. I need to know that this, I gestured between us, is a choice. Separate from the contract, separate from the debt, separate from everything. He stood up. He walked to the window, looking down at the river. When my father died, he said, his voice low, I made a promise that I would never be weak, that I would never rely on anyone, that I would build walls of steel so high no one could ever touch me. The foundry, the business, it was all just armor. He turned to face me, and then you walked in, soaked and freezing, and you told me you wouldn't be managed. You didn't just see the armor, Lila, you saw the man inside it, and you weren't afraid of him. He didn't move closer. He was respecting the space I had asked for. What we're doing, the fight, that's one thing, that's the contract. But this us, it's not a tactic. It's the one thing that's not. It's the only thing I can't control. He took a small, unsteady breath. The choice is yours. It always has been. I won't touch you again unless you tell me to. Unless you're the one who closes the distance. He had done it again. He had taken all the power I thought he had, and he'd handed it right back to me. He was waiting for my green light. I looked at him, the man who commanded the docks, the man who brought down data networks, the man who terrified Juno Creed standing there, completely vulnerable. And I was the one who closed the distance. I walked toward him, my steps silent on the thick carpet. I stopped an inch from him. My choice, I whispered, is to close the door. I put my hands on his chest. His heart was a hammer. Thump, 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 beating in time with mine. I rose on my toes and I kissed him. It wasn't a question. It was an answer. All the fear and uncertainty of the past few weeks, all the cold, all the loneliness it dissolved. This was not a kiss of gratitude or adrenaline. It was a kiss of knowing. It was deep, and it was sure. His arms came around me, pulling me tight, his hands tangling in my hair. His lips were firm and warm. I could feel the tension leaving his body, the armor melting away. My hands clutched his shirt, holding on like he was an anchor. Our breathing was ragged, two separate rhythms becoming one. We were just breathing each other in. He pulled back, just enough to rest his forehead against mine. His eyes were closed. Lila, he breathed, like a prayer. I didn't need words. I took his hand, my fingers lacing with his, and led him toward the bedroom. We fell onto the bed, a tangle of limbs and coats, but we stopped. We slowed down. He helped me out of my jacket, his fingers brushing the grime from my cheek. I unbuttoned his shirt, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from want. We were under the heavy, warm blanket, the city lights a silent, glittering skyline outside the window. This wasn't a fire, it was an ember. It was the slow, steady burn of trust. His hands were on my body, but they were reverent. His touch was a question, and my body answered yes. His lips traced a line from my jaw to my collarbone, and every point of contact was a promise. It was slow, it was deliberate, it was safe. It was two people who had been alone in the cold, finally finding warmth. Later, we lay tangled together, the silence comfortable. A tugboat spotlight swept across the ceiling, a slow-moving ghost. I was tracing the old, white scar on his knuckle. I used to come up here and just watch the river, he whispered, his voice rough. It was all just river and steel, logistics, numbers, things I could control. That's all my world was. He turned on his side, his arm draped over my waist, pulling me closer. His eyes, so often guarded, were wide open. It's not just river and steel anymore. Lila, now, there's you. I woke to the sound of a vibrating phone, not a buzz. A full-on frantic vibration. The world came crashing back in. It was morning. My phone was a cascade of notifications. The Lakefield Ledger had published the data. The headline was a bomb. Fake charity. real money, the Orchard Gate gift card machine. It was everything. The files, the offshore accounts, the direct undeniable link between the charitable donations and the Flashwave app. It was a masterpiece of data journalism, and it was all built on the memory card I'd pulled from that drain pipe. The city went into seizures. By 10 a.m., Flashwave's parent company, a massive, faceless hedge fund, had seen its stock plummet by 60%. They immediately suspended the app. By 11 a.m., the MOCT, their hands forced and their faces red with public humiliation, announced a full, sweeping investigation into Orchard Gate. By noon, the BC, desperate to get in front of the narrative, held a press conference. They didn't just announce their own investigation. They announced a new predatory loan borrowers protection program and a citywide amnesty for victims of Flashwave. My phone rang. It was the Ledger reporter. Lila the BC wants you to speak at their next presser. They want you to be the face of this, the voice of the night shift workers you helped save. Dorset, of course, did not stay silent. He was a cornered animal, and he lashed out. By 3 p.m., a new video was everywhere. It was professionally cut, deceptively edited. It was Juno's footage. It showed me, in grainy black and white, talking to the guard at Ironwell. Jump cut, it showed me at Turn Pier. Grabbing the memory card from the drain pipe. Jump cut, it showed an old, unrelated clip of CAs walking into the MOCT building. The implication was clear. I wasn't a whistleblower. I was a paid operative, a Valente rat, retrieving illicit data from my boss, who was feeding it to the feds. The video ended with bold, red text. They're all corrupt. Demand a federal prosecution of Lila Moreno. The public narrative, which had been pure adoration, split down the middle. I was either a hero or a criminal. CAs watched the video, his face turning to granite. He snapped his phone shut. That's it. He turned to me. All business. Ren is gassing up the car. I'm sending you away. He can have you across the Canadian border in 4 hours. New name, new life. You've done enough. This is over. I looked at him, the man who, just hours ago, had held me like I was made of glass. No, I said. Lila, this isn't a request. They are calling for your prosecution. This is not a smear campaign anymore. This is a threat. I know, and I'm not running. I stood up, pulling the blanket around me. They are all Dorset, Juno, the MOCT. They are all still trying to write my story for me. They're trying to make me the pawn again. I will not let them. I'm done. I grabbed my laptop from my bag. I'm not going to their press conference, and I'm not running. We're making our own statement, right here, right now. He stared at me. What are you talking about? A video. No jump cuts, no anonymous sources, no red text. Just you and me, one take, 4 minutes. We tell them the absolute truth. We filmed it right there, sitting on the sofa, the city skyline a clear, sharp backdrop. I hit record. My name is Lila Moreno. I started, my voice clear. You've heard my name a lot today. Now, you're going to hear my voice. I told them everything. The $18,000 debt, the 2 a.m. notifications, the fear. CA's went next. He didn't look at the camera. He looked past it, as if he was addressing the whole city. My name is Casimir Valenti. I didn't clear her debt as a tactic. I did it because I hate predators. My father was erased by men like Dorset. I will not stand by and watch it happen again. I finished it. This isn't about gangs. This is about autonomy. It's about your right to say no. To a loan shark. To a boss. To anyone who tries to tell you your life isn't your own. We posted it. It didn't just go viral. It hit a nerve. It was shared by waitresses, by truckers, by nurses, by gig workers. It was raw. It was real, and it was ours. That night, Ren called. CA's put him on speaker. I found him, Ren said. His voice was grim. The driver, he's alive. My heart stopped. Where? He had a tracker, an old-school GPS chip in the heel of his boot. He just turned it on. It's a single ping. He's at Depot 14. It's an old concrete maintenance bunker. under the old riverfront park. They're holding him there." CA's was already grabbing his coat. His face was a mask of cold fury. "I'm going. We're getting him out." CA's, "Wait," I said, grabbing his arm. "Stop, think." He turned it on. "This isn't a rescue. It's an invitation. It's a trap. They know he has a tracker. They want you to come. They're trying to lure you into a concrete box." "He's my man. Lila, he's been in there for days. I am not leaving him." "I'm not saying we leave him," I said, my mind racing. "I'm saying we don't play their game. They want a dark, quiet fight in a bunker. We give them the opposite. We don't trade a hostage for a gunfight. We trade a hostage for the truth." "What are you talking about?" "We live stream it," I said, the words tumbling out. "We go in, but we go in public. We go in with a body cam broadcasting straight to the Ledger's homepage. We make it a truth for hostage swap. They can't start a fight if the whole city is watching. We turn the light on. We make the public our shield." The plan was set. 2 body cams, one for me, one for CA's, a full first aid kit, an escape route, a utility cable tunnel that Wren had mapped, running from the bunker to the river. We stood at the door of the apartment, geared up. CA stopped me, his hands on my shoulders. He looked afraid. Not for himself, for me. "Lila, this is the most dangerous thing we've done. This isn't data. This is a rescue. This is real." He gently touched his forehead to mine, his eyes closed. "My contract with you stands. If anything feels wrong, the choice is always yours. You say the word, and we are gone. Your life, your call." I didn't pull back. I looked into his eyes. "I know," I whispered. "My choice is you." Depot 14 was a concrete tomb. It smelled of river bottom mud, rust, and the sharp metallic tang of old electricity. The air was cold, but thick and still. The only sound was the wind, whistling a low, mournful note through an unseen ventilation shaft high above us. "We're live," I whispered. CA's nodded, his hand resting near the first aid kit on his belt. The tiny red light on my chest cam was on. The matching one on his was on. The encrypted stream was feeding directly to the Lakefield Ledger's homepage and to my lawyer's secure server. The city was our witness. Wren was a ghost. He'd already slipped into a side passage, a dark utility tunnel that branched off toward the river. He was our escape route. We moved past collapsed piles of rebar and old machinery, and then we saw him. The Riverspan driver, Marcus. He was in a small, caged-off storage area. He was alive. He was tied to a chair, his head lolling, but his eyes snapped open when he saw us. They were wide with terror. "It's okay," CA said, his voice a low rumble. "We're getting you out." But my eyes weren't on Marcus. They were on what was stacked around him. Boxes, dozens of them, all marked with the Orchard Gate Financial logo. And inside, still in the plastic wrap, were hundreds of the same POS terminals I'd seen at Turn Pier. They hadn't just been holding a man here. They'd been holding their assets. This was a backup bank. CA's, I breathed, panning my body cam to capture the entire scene. "I know." A slow, deliberate footstep echoed from the main chamber. We both froze. CA's moved, placing himself between me and the sound. She stepped out of the shadows. Juno Creed. She was alone. She wore a dark, practical jacket. Her hands were empty, held loosely at her sides. She wasn't smiling. She looked tired. "Well," she said, her voice echoing in the damp space, "the happy couple? And you brought cameras. Very modern." "Where's your team, Juno?" CA's growled. "The sniper, the tail." "No team," she said, stopping a good 20 feet away. "This isn't an ambush. Valente, this is an offer. I'm here to end this. All of it." "You don't have the authority," CA's said. "Don't I?" Juno's voice was cold. "Ellie Dorset is a relic. He thinks steel and muscle. I think data and keys. He wants to burn the city down to protect his name. I want to get paid." "The offer," CA's demanded. "It's simple," she said. "A truce. Dorset's organization pulls out of the Lakefield docks completely. You get Riverspan. You get your legitimate trade. In return, you back off Orchard Gate. You let my digital assets go. You let me walk. CA's laughed, a short, humorless bark. You can't bind Dorset. He'd never agree to that. He doesn't have to, Juno said, and she held up her hand. She was holding a small metallic object on a lanyard, a USB key. I do. I hold the keys to the multi-signature wallet, the entire Orchard Gate network. Without me, Dorset's gift cards are just plastic. Without him, I'm just a woman on a watch list. We need a divorce. I'm offering you the settlement. It was a good offer, a clean win. I looked at CA's. He was considering it. And then I saw her other hand. Her right hand, it was at her side, her thumb tapping, almost imperceptibly, against the seam of her pants. 1, 2, 3, 4, a pause. 1, 2, 3, 4. It wasn't a nervous tick. It was a rhythm, a signal. My blood went cold. She wasn't alone. My eyes scanned the darkness above, the catwalks, the vents. There was a second shooter, a sniper, someone watching her, waiting for the signal to stop. The negotiation was a lie. It was a stall. She was buying time. I couldn't yell. I couldn't move. CA's was still locked on her face. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were shaking. I brought up the Ledger's live stream page. The view counter was spinning. 52,000 concurrent viewers. The comment section was a waterfall of text. Is that the missing driver? What's in those boxes? We see you. Lila. I angled my body. I made sure my chest cam could see my phone screen. Then I held the phone up, angling the screen toward Juno. The light from it cut through the gloom. Juno's eyes flickered from Cass's face to the phone and back. She frowned. I took a half step forward. My body cam was now filming her and her reaction to the live stream. Her eyes narrowed. She saw the view counter. She saw the comments. Her thumb had stopped tapping. She was checkmated. I had just turned her sniper into a witness. If a shot rang out, 52,000 people would know exactly who gave the order. You're smarter than he is, Juno whispered, a strange, cold respect in her eyes. The driver, CA's, I said, my voice high and tight. Now. Ren's shadow emerged from the tunnel behind the driver. He was a silent blur, a knife in his hand, not as a weapon, as a tool. Juno, CA's said, taking a step forward, his hand moving to the first aid kit. The game is over. It's never... Juno's phone rang, a loud, tinny burst of classical music that shattered the silence. She looked at it. Her face went pale. She answered it, and she put it on speaker. Juno, what is happening? My people are seeing a live feed, the Ledger. What did you do? It was Ellie Dorset. His voice was a thin, reedy screech of panic. There's been a complication, Juno said, her voice ice. Burn it, he shrieked. Burn it all, the terminals, the driver, all of it. I don't care about the money, just burn the evidence. The words hung in the damp air. They went from his mouth, to her phone, to my body cam, and out to the entire city. A direct, undeniable order to destroy a hostage. Juno slowly lowered the phone. She looked at CA's. She looked at me. She had just been given an impossible and public command. My phone buzzed. It was a new comment on the live stream, a verified account, Lakefield MOCT. We are aware of the situation and the live stream. A unit is en route to Depot 14. We advise all parties to stand down. Do not engage. The public had forced their hand. They couldn't ignore it. They couldn't stand outside and wait while a man was about to be burned. Juno knew it. She was trapped by her boss, by us, by the entire city. She let out a long, slow breath. She looked at me, not at CA's, at me. Use it, she whispered, her voice raw. All of it. Don't just win. Change the law. Don't let this cycle just repeat. She unclipped the lanyard from her neck. She didn't throw it. She placed the multi-sig key on the floor. And then she simply backed away, disappearing into the same shadows she had come from. The sirens were no longer faint. They were a roar, echoing down into the bunker. Ren, go, CA's yelled. Ren sliced the ropes on the driver. He hauled the groaning man to his feet. Cable tunnel now. We ran. We plunged into the darkness of the utility tunnel, the smell of the river thick in our throats. We could hear shouts from the bunker behind us, the slam of car doors above us on the park grounds. The world had exploded in a storm of red and blue lights. We burst out of a rusted grate, spilling onto the muddy riverbank. The air was freezing. We were soaked in grime and sweat. And a man was standing there, waiting for us. He was older, in an expensive overcoat that was far too thin for the weather. His face was gray with rage. Ellie Dorset. He must have been waiting in his car when the live stream went up. "You!" he screamed, his eyes landing on CA's. "You ruined everything!" He wasn't a mastermind. He wasn't a digital ghost. He was just a spoiled, angry old man who had been exposed. He lunged, his hands out, grabbing for Cass's throat. He never made it. Flash, pop, pop, flash. A wall of light erupted. The Ledger news van had pulled right up onto the grass. A local TV crew was right behind it, and behind them a crowd, dozens of people, drawn by the sirens, drawn by the live stream, their phones all held high, their cameras all on. Dorset froze, blinded, trapped in a spider web of light. He was no longer a shadow. He was just a criminal, caught on camera. He snarled, shielding his eyes. He turned and ran, not toward us, toward the water. There was a sleek black speedboat tied to a small private dock, his escape. He jumped onto the deck, fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life. But he wasn't going anywhere. A BC patrol boat, its lights flashing, glided out from under the bridge, blocking the channel. A heavy, yellow containment boom was already floating on the water, sealing the inlet. Dorset slammed the throttle. The boat lunged, hit the boom, and the engine died with a wet, final gasp. The trap was shut. The digital data from the Ledger and the public outcry had forced the BC to act. The data trap and the public trap had sprung at the exact same time. Silence. The only sounds were the lapping water, the distant sirens, and the clicking of 100 cell phone cameras. CA's was breathing hard beside me. He didn't look at Dorset. He looked at me. He found my hand. His was covered in grease and cold. Mine was shaking. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say I love you. He didn't say anything. He just squeezed my hand tight. We stood on the riverbank, filthy and exhausted, and watched as the lights of the city we had just changed bore down on us. The victory wasn't loud. It was just a quiet, steady grip in the dark. The world didn't change overnight, but it changed. Weeks after the showdown at Depot 14, the Lakefield Ledger won a state journalism award for their series, The Orchard Gate Machine. The public outcry was so loud, so sustained, that the MOCT, the same organization that had tried to trap us, was forced to do the one thing they never wanted to do: create a law. They publicly proposed the Fair Harbor Act, a piece of, admittedly, fictional legislation aimed at predatory, high-interest lending. It was a start. The BC, not to be outdone, formally announced that the Orchard Gate network was fully dismantled. They even set up a reimbursement fund for the most extreme victims of Flashwave, paid for by the assets they'd seized from Dorset. And me, I wasn't just a waitress anymore. I was a voice. I was invited to sit on the city's new night shift worker advisory council. I had a seat at the table. The changes rippled outward. Riverspan Logistics went into a full, transparent restructuring. CA's, true to his word, began pulling back from the gray. He stepped away from the shadows, funneling his resources into his legitimate businesses. He took the foundry and started a foundation, turning the massive cold workshop into a vocational training center for former dock workers and truck drivers, the very people Dorset's schemes had targeted. Juno Creed, in a move that stunned the city, took a plea deal. She'd given the feds the multi-sig key and testimony that buried Ellie Dorset under a mountain of digital evidence. In exchange for her full cooperation, she received a suspended sentence. She didn't disappear. The next time I saw her name, it was on a flyer for a port safety class she was teaching for women working the night shift. Ren, no longer just a shadow, became the Foundry's official security director. I saw him at the launch event talking to a group of new trainees. There was gray in his hair now, but the hard lines around his eyes were softer. He was actually smiling. Spring came to Lakefield. The ice on the river broke, and the city felt like it could breathe again. I stood on a small podium on the newly cleaned riverbank, the site of our live stream, and gave a speech. "My name is Lila Moreno," I said, my voice carrying over the small crowd. No microphone needed. A few months ago, I was drowning in $18,000 of debt I didn't create. Today, I'm standing here. Nothing magic happened. I just found out that my story was my story to tell. We don't need miracles. We just need fair laws. And we need to hold on to each other's hands so no one gets pulled under. That night, I went home, back to the glass tower that was no longer a cage, but a choice. I walked in, and the apartment smelled amazing. Not like stale air and fear. It smelled of fennel and black pepper and garlic. CA's was in the kitchen, and he was wearing a dark t-shirt, his suit jacket long gone. His sleeves were rolled up, and he was stirring a large pot of soup, a wooden spoon in his hand. I leaned against the doorframe, just watching him. The most powerful man on the docks, the man who had brought down a financial empire, was making soup. He looked up, and he smiled. Not his small, rare, private smile. A real, open, unguarded smile. "You're late, Ma," he said. "I had to change the law," I said, dropping my keys. We ate on the sofa, bowls of hot soup in our laps, the city lights just beginning to glitter below. "It's funny," I said, looking into the steam. "It all started because I threw away a piece of paper. Because of one receipt. I was so terrified. That first night I got that text from you. Don't worry about Flashwave. I thought it was a threat." "It was a promise," he said quietly. "I had the digital copy. I didn't care about the paper. I hated that they had you." "And then you offered me a job," I mused. "An internship. Was that always the plan?" He put his bowl down. "No. The plan was to clear the debt and walk away. But then you talked back. You didn't just accept the gift. You questioned it. You demanded answers. I wasn't offering you a job. I was trying to keep you from walking away from me." He reached over to the coffee table and picked up a thin, manila envelope. He handed it to me. I opened it. It was a contract. It wasn't an employment agreement. It was a partnership agreement. It made me a full co-owner of Valente Freight Audits, the legitimate, legal side of his operation. I read the clauses. Full moral veto power over any and all operations. Full access to all accounts, audits, and plans. This partnership may be dissolved at any time by Lila Moreno, for any reason, without condition or penalty. He was giving me the keys, not just to the apartment, to the kingdom. I put the contract down on the table, right next to our empty soup bowls. I didn't sign it. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. "I don't need this. CA's," I said, my voice soft. "I don't need a piece of paper to know that I have the choice. I don't need a contract to know you'll listen. I know my power here. I know my place." His face tensed, just slightly. He'd misunderstood. I put my hand over his, "But I'm going to sign it." "Why?" "Because we do," I said, tapping the paper. "We need to set the rules. We need to build a new system that other people can see. A system built on clarity, not on shadows. A system where the person who serves the coffee has just as much right to the truth as the person who owns the chain. I'm signing this for the next Lila." He understood. He slid a pen across the table. I signed my name. We stood on the balcony later, the spring wind fresh, finally free of the ice. The smell of steel and river water was a comfort, not a threat. I put my hand on his, resting on the cold railing. His hand was solid, warm. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a new text, an unknown number. I have the original receipt, the paper one. I was one of the MOCT agents at the counter that night. I kept it as a souvenir. "You did the right thing. Thank you for choosing the truth over the debt. A guest." I smiled and slipped the phone back in my pocket. Another buzz. This one was a picture message from Myrtle. It was a photo of a new, small, hand-carved wooden plaque hanging behind the register at the Harbor and Grit. It was simple. No receipt is worth more than a person. I sent back a single heart. I leaned my head on Cass's shoulder, looking out at the glittering lights of the bridges. The city was the same, but it was all different. "That first night," he whispered, his voice a low rumble against my ear, "in the diner. I saw you shivering in that thin jacket. You looked terrified, but your eyes weren't shivering. They were angry. They were solid." I smiled, turning my face into his shoulder. I was freezing, I admitted. I was shivering from the cold. I paused, then added, "Now I think it's just from love." A distant train horn echoed across the water. He turned me to face him. He kissed me. It wasn't the hesitant, questioning kiss from the foundry. It wasn't the desperate, fiery kiss from the apartment. This was calm. It was warm and sustainable. And it felt like home. It was a kiss that promised breakfast. It was a kiss that promised a future. A small, red security light on a building across the street blinked. A city camera, maybe recording us for some faceless archive. I didn't care. We weren't a boss and a pawn. We were just two people, standing on a balcony, in love. The final piece clicked into place a week later. A plain cardboard box was delivered to the foundry. No return address. CAs and I opened it together. Inside, there was no note, just a set of rolled-up schematics, a map. It was a map of every other blind wharf, every secret depot, every unnamed shadow warehouse in the entire Midwest, the ones Dorset had run, the ones CAs had never even known about. At the bottom, in neat, sharp handwriting, was a single sentence. "So no one has to throw away their life's receipt ever again, Jay." Juno, she hadn't just walked away. She'd given us the keys to the rest of the kingdom. I looked up at CAs, and he looked at me. The old fire was in his eyes, but it was different now. It wasn't just his fight. It was ours. The fight for fairness was going to continue, but this time, we weren't in the shadows. We had rules, we had love, and we had a whole city that was finally ready to change. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Where in the world are you tuning in from? I'd love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. If you enjoyed this story, please support us by hitting that hype button so more people can hear it.